afternoon. Welcome once again to the First Baptist Hour. Last week we had as our guest Tremendous Jones, President of Life Management Services Incorporated of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who was the Baptist Men's Day speaker last Sunday morning at the First Baptist Church here in Dothan. Well, Charles Jones is with us again this afternoon right here on the First Baptist Hour, and we're going to have the unusual privilege of sharing with him some learning experiences, especially as reflected in what his son, Jerry, has learned through the world of books. We've been talking about knowing Christ and growing with Christ, learning to live abundantly and tremendously through the world of books and assimilating those wonderful books and the experiences of others into our own hearts and lives as we too travel this road of Christian experience and learning. Tremendous, welcome back to the First Baptist Hour.
Well, Harper, it's just tremendous to be here. And again, let's remind anybody that may not have been listening last week that when you say Tremendous Jones, that makes me shiver. I'd rather, if I had a nickname, be called Learning Jones rather than Tremendous. But because of my limited vocabulary, I used the word tremendous, and had I known it, I'd have used the word learning earlier so that I'd have had the right one. But it's great to be here.
Well, you are tremendous, and those who listened last week know that. But, you know, we picked up some viewers. There's some folks who called their friends last week and told them about that wonderful program on the First Baptist Hour here on Channel 18, and they're listening this afternoon. So maybe you ought to give us just a little resume of what we talked about last week.
Well, one of the things, among many, but the one that means more to me than perhaps any other idea that we share, is the one of communicating, relating, or learning through the power of books with each other. We all know about the generation gap that they say is a generation gap. We all know about the communication problems. But I found that these are non-existent. Now, not that there aren't problems, but I mean the problems go deeper, and the problems we all talk about never seem to go away. And we only compound them, it seems. And I stumble across most of the things that we do. But we talked about how that I got my son Jerry when he was 14. I paid him $10 for every book that he read, and gave me a book report. And then when he went off to college, instead of writing me a Dear Dad letter, like so many times, unfortunately, some parents experience, wrote me a Dear Dad postcard. And the postcards, Harper, were nothing more than ideas that he got from books that I paid him to read that he would jot on a card. Now, a lot of people say, well, what kind of a kid would sit down and write a card every day? Well, you know, it surprises me. Now, he's going to graduate school in his fifth year now, and he's still doing it. But he's a busy kid. He played football. He was a night accountant at the Quality Court Motel to make some spending money. He waited tables at a girl's soiree, he said, to get a free meal. He was a dorm manager to get a free room. So it wasn't that he wasn't busy, just like any normal kid. But I never have gotten over, as these cards have come to me, and I don't think he'll ever realize how much God has done in working me over in teaching me without him trying to teach me. See, that's the secret. See, I know that Jerry was 10 times as smart as I am. And I know that he knows he's 10 times as smart as I am. And I know he knows I know it. But what always threw me was he never let me know he knows it. That's maturing. See. Well, this is why I'm so excited. Not to tell people about my family, although I'm so grateful to God for them. But I want to share ideas. And I don't want to share a personality that anybody does something the way I do it. I want to talk about a principle, because that's what life's about. And I believe that as a management consultant working with men, we tell businessmen, salesmen, managers, that I have never discovered a principle in the life of an executive or a manager or a salesman. I've never discovered one principle that's applicable to them that's not as applicable to the life of a teenager or a wife. I believe that principles may be exercised, executed differently, but I believe the principles are the same. And so I think that this power of books, I just can't. Let's take a minute. Let me show you the power of books, and read a couple cards to you, and tell you where some of them came from. Dad, Don't you get sick of those days when nothing goes wrong? Today, not only do I have problems, and not only are they getting worse, but today, God gave me so many great problems. I have my choice of which area I want to grow in. Hey, see, what an exciting thing. Now, you know where he got that? We've been learning together that one of the greatest discoveries in life is that life is nothing but problems, and there are going to be more of them. And see, a lot of people miss this. You know what I've discovered is the only problem, a real problem anybody can ever have that can defeat them? Not financial, not marital, not physical. People who are learning it like it is, where they have marital problems, people learning it like it is, they'll know that marital problems draw people closer together. People who are learning it like it is don't fear physical problems because they know that physical problems make a lot of people grow up. People who are learning it like it is don't really fear financial problems because they know that financial problems have a way of making you grow up or grow deeper. The only problem we found that can whip anyone, and every one of us are susceptible to it, the only problem that can defeat you is when you think you're the only one that has one. That's it. See. Now, a lot of people, maybe today you think you're the only. Listen, my friend, the greatest discovery. Now, for example, you see Pastor Shannon sitting here. He's so happy, and he's so relaxed, and he's a pastor of the First Baptist, and you say, oh, such success, and no wonder he's happy. I said, friend, and I say this in all sincerity, don't you let Pastor Shannon's happy look fool you. He's as miserable as we are, aren't you, Pastor Shannon?
That's right.
But not miserable like you think, you see. Now, the point is that life is not the bowl of cherries. Life is life. And life isn't something you succeed at or fail at. Life is living successfully, and living successfully is failing experiences. For example, a young fellow says, sir, how'd you get successful? He says, good judgment. He said, well, how'd you get that? He says, experience. He said, well, how'd you get that? He says, poor judgment. Well, now, that's the way life is. See, that isn't that way with you. It's Pastor Shannon, everybody. So the point, this card came. Jerry and I started learning years ago that everybody's got problems. And your job is learning to live with them and build on them and let God give you, put some meaning in them so you can use them to get bigger problems. Not worse problems. Bigger problems for bigger living. That's what life's all about. Here's one of the books, though. Dad, it was a great discovery when I realized the only way to talk enthusiasm and encouragement was to think it. But how do you think it? I guess that's where reading comes in. Because you sure can't, or at least without a ton of frustration, try to think that way. Unless you fed yourself with Oswald Chambers, Watchman Nee, Dick Halverson, Napoleon Hill, and others. Then as you share and encourage yourself, you can encourage others. I might mention that Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, Jeffrey, at age 8, read Think and Grow Rich and turned in a book report at school and got an A. Now, Oswald Chambers, I have to mention this, friends. Oswald Chambers, that's my favorite author. Oswald Chambers died at 43. Never wrote a book. My utmost for his highest is just little daily devotionals. I carry it with me. I've had a wet eye in every airport in North America. Because he says more sometimes in one sentence than some books do in the whole thing. And I don't know if you know this, Harper, but Oswald Chambers' wife wrote this after he died. She died just 4 or 5 years ago. She made shorthand notes of everything Oswald said. And I tell my wife sometimes, I say, honey, the world is never going to know how great a man I am because you haven't written down one lousy word I've said. But seriously.
She wrote the notes.
She made notes of when he'd have devotionals. And so that Jerry and I we've cut our teeth together, cut our teeth on Spurgeon, but this Chambers, oh, so wonderful. Well, here's his 20th birthday. Dad, well, I finally made it to 20. The only feeling I have is I can hardly wait until I'm 40. Must be fantastic to live each day with 25 years of experience and thinking and awareness behind you instead of just 5. See, he was just thinking, see? And already he's begun to become aware. Well, I know that you'll love this. He was 22 years old, January 14th. And this one really was the greatest birthday present he could give me on his birthday. Dad, while I'm narrowing the gap, made it to 22. That means you're no longer twice as smart as I am. I have half your experience. Now, just because I admit you have twice my experience and smarts doesn't mean I'll always do what you advise. Your experience may not be totally relevant to my personal situation, but the fact still remains that whether it is 40-some years of the same experience over and over, or 40-some years of a different experience every year, it still adds up to 40, and there is a type of wisdom that comes with only age that neither books or thought can promise. It's that thing that makes an uneducated old farmer with common sense look like a genius in emotional maturity and happiness when he stands next to a green college student. In other words, Dad, agree with you or disagree, you still get all the respect I can muster. Well, you know, when I hear about all this nonsense going on, one day Jerry said, you know, Dad, if I ever disagree with you, I won't let you know it. I said, why? He said, I don't want to hurt you. Now, do you know why, Harper, he didn't want to hurt me? Well, he already knows I have a broken heart. I said, why should you beat me over the head and make my life any more miserable? I'm already miserable, see? Now, because I'm aware of this is the way life is, I can enjoy it. But now the average person, they think because they've got heartaches and problems and they're miserable, they suck their thumbs and whine and gripe and run and search after pots of gold that end of rainbows. That nobody ever exists. And a fella comes along and tells you how to live happily with your wife. He's got his third one, and you're putting up with the same old problem, and he's telling you how to put up with it. I said, oh, no. Well, now, so Jerry is catching on, you see.
No doubt you can see some of the authors and books from which he's learned as he writes these cards.
Now, here's one. Every young guy who's a sportsman. This should be written on the front page of tomorrow's newspapers. Dad, football wouldn't be football or a game at all if we forget the rules. The game is who can perform best under certain rules. Imagine a player complaining to his coach about the existence of sidelines on the grounds they restricted his freedom and caused him to drive up the middle more. Well, that's beautiful. See? Now, he sees, there's a lot of things he doesn't agree with today, but he sees a necessity for a framework and something to build on rather than just destroy everything and buy what so many are being told today. Well, here's let me close off on this. I want to share, Harper, the best one I ever got. I was down in Houston a couple years ago, and I was discouraged. Never let anybody know what I am, but I was. And here came my mail. Dad, I don't believe I told you lately, but I want you to know I love you. Not because of what you've given me, or because you're tremendous, or because of the answers in life you share. Those things are nice, but they aren't important. Because someday if you go in relief, and all your ideas fall through, and your name becomes mud, I'll still love you, because you're my dad. How he got that, before he went off to college, we stood out in the kitchen by the stove. I said, son, I want you to remember one thing the rest of your life. I don't care how lousy a kid you ever are. I'll never love you because you're a good boy. I'll always love you because I've got a great God. The reason I want you to remember that is I don't want you to ever love me because I'm a good dad. Because one of these days you're probably going to find out that I'm not what I'm cracked up to be. And when you find out that I'm not what I'm cracked up to be, I want you to know you don't love me because I'm a good dad. You love me because you've got a great God. This came as last semester. Dad, when you first used to say I love you because we have a great God, I couldn't figure it out. What in the world you meant? I thought you ought to love me because I'm a person or you're you. However, now I get it, and I want you to know you're a great dad, but I love you because I've got a great God. Well, I'm just so grateful to God to teach me, show me not to preach to a kid because I don't need to preach to him. I need to be learning my own heart. And I'm glad that God is breaking my heart by showing me a son learning what I should have been learning 20 years ago. And I'm glad Jerry's seen that this is the best way to change me, is to let me grow and not try to change me. And by him doing that, it's shown me more that I can't change him. And God's got to change him and my wife, and that's how it happens. But I just, again, would remind you that I'm not talking about a father-son relationship. We're just talking about the power of books, and I hope you all have already asked Harper to send you the book list I put out, but the 22 books I paid Jerry to read is here. Some business books, and then a story, but if you want them, we'll use these to get them. But Harper, I think it's enough of books, but we could just, here's a book I'm just reading now, Reality Therapy, by Dr. Christian psychiatrist. I tell you, Harper, this is unbelievable. It's just tremendous. And then Dick Halverson's Perspectives. You can see how I've worn that out. Here's the one I'm just reading now, The Power of Negative Thinking, the most positive book I've ever read. But say, how many of you have followed Jim Ryan? The Jim Ryan story. Every 10, 12, 13, 14-year-old book, every one of you parents ought to get the Jim Ryan story. Oh, it's so tremendous. I can't take any time to tell you about it. Just tremendous.
Tell us what you do. Tremendous. You're traveling all over the country, meeting with businessmen's groups. What do you say to these men?
Well, we talk, basically, Harper, or excuse me, I shouldn't have used that word. We think with people about the area of leadership. But we lay the groundwork using a lot of reverse psychology to prove that everybody's a leader. You don't try to be a leader. Or you hear on a lot of TV shows, we'll talk about developing your personality. They say, be yourself. I say, that's a lie. You ever be yourself, you won't have a friend in the world. Your job is being what God meant you to be, and that means a lot of learning and unlearning to peel off that individuality, that individualism, getting rid of all that elbows and letting the person that you are develop and grow and relate to people. And that takes a lot of living and learning. Well, we want to drive this home to combat and counteract all the nonsense and the verbal booby traps and the mental gymnastics that everybody is just flooded with in the TV and everything they read. We just want them to think. That's why people say, well, you talk so fast. I say, I talk fast on purpose. They say, well, we can't remember what you say. Good, I don't want you to remember what I say. I want you to go away thinking about what you're thinking about, not about what I said. Because if you go quote me, by the time you get out of here and quote me, I'll probably find out I was wrong. They say, well, why are you saying this? I'm trying to show you what it's like to develop an uninhibited spirit, to think out loud with your employees or your employer or your kids, and you need that. Well, we do this then in seminars, workshops. And we prove that in business, that a man shouldn't try to put his church first. A man shouldn't try to put his family first. He shouldn't try to put his job first. That they complement each other. That the Christian life is one of Christ complementing every area of this man's life. And I've discovered that the people who talk about what they put first usually don't put anything first but themselves. My job is learning over again that the best lessons I've learned from my church have been on my job. The best lessons I've learned from my job have been at my church. And so we want to show businessmen there's a need for technical competence, which we all seem to spend plenty of time on. But there's this great need to think and be learning and awareness. And we have some of the top people in America, salesmen who do $10 million a year, managers that have agencies do $50 or $100 million a year, come and sit through our same 3 and 4 hour, 8-hour workshops 4 and 5 times, same thing, word for word, 4 or 5 times in a 2-year period. Because they know the second or third time they come, they quit listening to me. They start thinking, and they go away. And I do this with our pastor. And Sunday morning, I'm sitting there making notes of what I think as a result of my pastor says. Sometimes he thinks I'm writing down a sermon. I think sometimes he ought to see my notes. And then I, for a little fun, sometimes I say to him going out of church, I say, Pastor, you were really good this morning. You interrupted my train of thought 6 times. Well, that's great. See, most people don't realize the purpose of coming to church is not to listen to you, but to listen to what God would have them realize as a result of you breaking the Word of God. Well, I went to church for years and never caught on to that. What a thrill. Well, that's business. Unless a man is getting that Sunday morning at church, he's not as effective Monday morning in the office. They go together. So people say to me, well, how much time do you spend for God? I say, my friend, what do you ask me such a stupid question for? I eat for God and breathe for God. I wake up for God and go to sleep for God. How can I separate what's for who? Once I committed my life to Him, and I tried to serve Him for years after I came to know Him, and then I gave up trying to serve Him, and I enjoy Him, and as I enjoy Him, I find that's what the service is. And people who don't enjoy God should keep their mouths shut because they're doing more harm than good anyway. So this is what we do with businessmen.
What kind of groups do you speak to? Is it conventions or?
We're on a tour now. We just, tomorrow we will be all radio broadcasters in Washington. And Monday afternoon we'll be in Denver. These will be audiovisually people. And then we'll be with insurance people on Friday in Billings, Montana. And then we'll be at Friday night at Long Beach for the Junior Chamber of Commerce Distinguished Service Dinner. And then we go to Honolulu for a lumber convention. And then we come back to Des Moines for, I think, an insurance group. And then we go from there to the Bahamas for a large group of chiropractors. So it's professional people and Mobil Oil, Waltz Foods, More Business Forms, all kinds of organizations.
Now, I want to mention this before we get too far along, but lest it slip my mind. These are some records of some of your talks.
Right. These are, this is the Price of
businessmen.
Leadership, done at Hollywood Beach with a large group of couples. Those are 2 records. And this is the Laws of Leadership, which is all reverse psychology and proves, this is when we prove, Harper, that work is not something that you like to do. I try to get young people to see, like yesterday in Haleyville, that people who are looking for something to do they like to do are mistaken. Life isn't to do what you like to do. Life is to do what you ought to do. And as you are learning to do what you ought to do, you eventually discover that what you thought you didn't like to do, you do like to do. But people who spend their lives going around sucking their thumb, looking for what they like to do, never find anything they like to do anyway. Well, these are just things. For example, my boss used to tell me something like, why don't you work hard and get one of those good jobs so you can be happy? Well, I worked hard and to get all the good jobs. And every time I got the good job, I found the fellow who had the good job, took all the good stuff with him and stuck me with what I thought I was getting away from. Well, I finally caught on. Work, there's no excitement in work. The excitement is in people. God didn't make jobs to make us. He made us to make jobs. My job is working at getting excited about getting the work done. That's why there's well, this is what we do in these. And this is why men will come back. Because they're so hungry to hear somebody say what he's always known, but we've heard so much that never was, that we've filled up our minds with, we can't think about what is. And so we help uncloud. That's why I call myself a non-motivator. I'm not a motivator. We unmotivate people. We show people that motivation isn't for the extrovert or introvert. Motivation isn't how loud you yell or how high you leap. You can be an extremely motivated person even if you're an extreme introvert. Motivation is discovery and awareness from within that helps you grow up and stand up rather than being propped up and pumped up and pepped up, which is what people call motivation. That isn't motivation.
Well, how do these businessmen, sometimes we call them hard-hearted, hard-headed businessmen, relate to your positive Christian faith and your commitment to God?
Well, you know, I at one time was concerned, of that, how they would really, or how they would accept it. But that's you don't have to fear that, because we see all about us people who have nothing to believe in, or almost nothing. People just want to know, do you really believe what you're talking about? And they'll listen to anybody. But I always try to communicate to everybody. You can't present Jesus Christ cleverly and win a convert. Jesus Christ is for the man or woman who's hungry for real life. He can't be explained, he can't be bought, can't be sold. I'm a Christian today, not because I figured out Christianity. But one day, 20 years ago, I bowed my head and I said, God, I know how to act. I don't know how to be. I know how to say I love you, but I've never loved anybody in my whole life. And based on John 3:16, which somebody showed me, and he said he believed it, and I didn't know anybody believed it, I got away from him and I bowed my head in my car in West King Street that afternoon in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and asked Jesus Christ to come into my heart. Well, I haven't really felt religious over the years, but I never felt married either. One day I stood up and swore off all of the girls and took my wife to be my wife. And like that, one day I bowed my head and renounced my 10 gods and asked Christ to be my Savior. I never try to tell people to do what I did or believe what I believe. But with everything that's in me, I just want my kids and everybody to know that if I'm the last guy in the world who believes that Jesus Christ is exactly what he said he was, I really believe with all my heart. You may prove me wrong, but in my heart, I'm glad that I found the meaning of life. And I hope that others will just keep an open mind and search. And Jesus said he'll reveal himself to you, too.
That's a wonderful testimony, tremendous. And I want to share this other record, the new LSD. What is the new LSD?
That's the leadership that takes you on a trip of all trips, the trip into reality. Leadership, service, and dedication. See, young people take LSD to get away from it all because they don't know how to get into it all. And it's natural to want to get away from it all if you don't know how to get into it all. So we've designed the new LSD, leadership, service, and dedication. All you do is get hooked on doing some serving and dedicated, and especially empowered by the Holy Spirit, and you get into it all so you don't have to want to get away from it all. I've never known a kid hooked on that kind of LSD who took the other kind.
Now, if some of our viewers would like to have a record, would you make them available to me if they'll write me?
Right, and we'll send them information.
Now, we've already told them that you have a book list and this personal testimony from Jerry, your son, or the article he wrote, Thanks, Dad. If they'll write to me, Harper Shannon, First Baptist Church in Dothan, I'll see they get these free. And then if any of them would like one of those records, we'll certainly see that they know how to order it.
Tremendous.
Tremendous. It's been tremendous to have you in Dothan and here on the First Baptist Hour.
Thank
you serve a tremendous Lord, and that's the thing we have in common, isn't it? That we have that faith optimism road to travel, and I'm sure that many of these viewers today have been inspired to dig in that world of books. On the one hand,
they're going to take a trip if they do.
It's a wonderful experience, isn't it?
Tremendous.
Learning every day, and then.
Oh, and my wife, I tell you, works with the wives, and talk when you read these books. Talk about them together. That's the idea. Share these ideas together.
What do you talk about when you say? What do you mean when you talk about the power packs?
Oh well, we'll give them some information on that later.
All right.
Two.
Well, we only have a few seconds left. This is the First Baptist Hour. Charles E. Tremendous Jones of Life Management Services Incorporated in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, has been our guest last Sunday afternoon and this afternoon. We're grateful for the opportunity of having been in your home.